So the further down we go, the better it would be for that reason.
There's a walking track through there now. Would you be looking at combining the two together?
Just through you, Mr. Chairman. No, we would look at the road coming on the eastern side of the trees. Otherwise, if we put a road through the middle, the damage to the tree roots would be not sustainable for those trees.
So you're going to consult with the domain users?
Yes, yeah.
When you get to that stage, could you share it with us as well, just so we're up to speed with what's being shared out there?
Yep.
Thanks. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Through the chair, I see here this is a living document and it's going to be reviewed on a 5-yearly basis. So will that kind of coincide with our long-term plan, or how's that going to work? And it's not going to be another consultation process, is it? It's just going to be tied in with the LTP when it's reviewed?
Through the hearings and deliberations, I think there's general support for making it a 5-year time period. Originally, I think we suggested 10, but the feedback was for 5. In terms of the consultation process, yes, that's still to be teased out, but I imagine it would involve some public input.
Yeah, we asked for it to be 5, as in 10 was too long, and things change reasonably quickly. But best endeavours at the moment. Finished questions? No more questions? And I'm going to take the recommendation in 3 parts. So someone like to move part number 1, please.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'll move part 1, and I give notice that I move part 2 and 3.
Okay. Seconder for part 1? Councillor Rawlinson?
I'm happy to second that, and I'm also, if there's no further discussion, happy to second.
Oh, hang on. Put Angus, you go off. Put your light off. Put your light off. Diane, start again, please.
I said I'm happy to second part 1, but if you Angus also moved part 2 and 3, I'm happy to second that if meeting requires.
We'll get there when we get there, but we're just doing number 1 at the moment.
Right, I'll second part 1, that we adopt the Ashburton Domain Development Plan.
Angus, you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, I just want to say...
Who's on? Lane, the mover's going to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wish to say that this has been through a very involved process. As we all know, the public had their say, especially on one particular issue, and I believe it was the right way in which to do it, and I ask councillors to vote that we adopt the Domain Development Plan.
Open for debate. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy to be part of this plan, but I can't do this part, the first part here, because I reckon the original plan we had was, to me, a 30-year plan vision. We took the short term and just tried to keep people happy for the next 5-10 years. So, as a planner, I can't say I like this part, so I have to say I have to vote against it.
Any further speakers for or against the motion? Right to reply, Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, keeping our bosses as happy as possible. The bosses are the constituents and the people of Ashburton. I'm quite happy to do as they say occasionally, especially when they are absolutely correct.
I just had the right to reply.
Okay.
Sorry, right to reply has been hit. The seconder gets a talk.
No, just want to clarify something.
Too late. We've had the right to reply. Right. We've had the right to reply. I'm going to put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Passed. Against? Councillor Brown. Recorded?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Number 2. Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the improvement projects will be price checked prior to inclusion and consideration in the long-term Plan 2021-2031 process, and wish members of the public and councillors all the best to get as much movement in the plan as they wish to in the ordering of the projects via the LTP process.
Seconder. Councillor Rawlinson,
Yep, happy to second that.
seconded earlier you wanted to. Open for debate. There's been none, I'll put the motion. All in favour, all those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Item number 3.
Mr Mayor, I move that this year's 2020-21 funding for the Ashburton District Domain related projects be reprioritised for the following projects. A, Project 5, New Entry and Access Road. That is Project B, Project 8, Waterway Enhancement, and C, the Project 7, Walnut Avenue Promenade. I wish to speak if I'm allowed.
I'll get a seconder. Councillor Brown, and you speak to the motion. Lane. Go. Yep. Councillor Mackay.
To have the new entry and access road done as soon as possible is also vital to traffic movements through our town, and that is why I'm pleased that Council has put it at top of the list to get done as soon as possible. The waterway enhancement, well, I'll have something to say on that when we actually get to that in due process. And the Walnut Avenue Promenade, because of the number of people walking around the domain, especially in winter time, it would be good to have somewhere where they can have dry feet when they get home. And I urge councillors to vote in favour of 3.
Questions? No, debate. Or do we have a question? And the question is, Bert, those 3 projects are in this financial year, are they not?
They'll probably extend into the following year because there's insufficient funding to complete all 3 projects this year.
So should we move the...
Which is why we need them in the LTP and get started.
It just says it's 2021.
Get started.
Right,
But they'll
okay.
be also included in the LTP.
Planning for it,
To
yeah.
finish them off.
Right. But you have enough funds for the roadway in, because that's got to happen this financial year when the traffic lights go in on Walnut Ave and West Street, which is happening early this next calendar year.
Yes, the $410,000 that we've got for this financial year will cover that that new entrance access road, the full costs based on prices we've got at the moment. So, to the best of our knowledge, it will cover that.
Thought we'd get all the way to Timor for that. But no further debate. Oh, Councillor Lovett.
I was just asking about B there, you got Project 8 Waterway Enhancement, and I'm wondering what goes with the end.
And C.
And,
The next one.
oh right, okay. So the water enhancement, it's taking priority over like bits of the
It'll
playground.
come in the LTP
Yeah,
starting.
okay.
The timeline's there, and what we're going to do for the water enhancement is in the document. Yeah. I'll put the write a reply, Councillor Mackay, if needed.
Aye.
I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Now, item number 11, Bearing Square East, page 52. 58. Oh, it does too. 58. Just checking, you awake? I've got Jane and Tony here. We'll go to questions first. So think of your questions and we'll do them right now. If there's any questions for the Bearing Square East rejuvenation, which is going out for consultation. Oh, sorry, it's going out for final design brief.
Yes.
This is the final design brief. Yep.
This is approval.
Approval here. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask when this goes out, has there consideration been taken with the Christmas tree that can be more centralised, you know, with electricity leads and stuff in the middle of, in line with the clock tower, instead of having it on the side of the park?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, so there's more work to be done in terms of where the electricity should be located and where the relevant infrastructure is needed to host community events. So that's part of what the next stage will be, is confirming where that should go.
So just think what the next stage is. This goes out for the design and then comes back to council for approval. Is that how it works?
So Athfield Architects, they prepared the concept plan with the landscape architects, and we'll give them this brief once council is confirmed, and then that will form their final design, and then that will then feed into the long-term plan.
Right. So there's, if they've not got it right, what do councillors get to comment on that, or it is what it is? Yeah, Hamish.
What I hope is that the recommendations on page 58 are about to either receive your support or be amended, and that then the final design will reflect those matters, and we wouldn't then expect that council of their own volition would be revisiting those. So if those matters in front of you now don't resonate, then this is the forum to debate and propose change. If these matters are acceptable to council, then we wouldn't expect those to be relitigated by council.
Right.
So this is your opportunity if you don't like it, is what I'm trying to say.
This is the opportunity. So when the plan comes back, don't say, I wanted this, I wanted that. This is the time. Councillor Cameron.
Just a quick question with regards to the parking, Tony. Am I correct when I read the report, we've got 90-degree angle parking in front of the library and the civic centre, but in front of the Bering Square side, there's no parking? There's only parking on one side of the street, which is a one-way street?
Yes, so
Yeah.
yes, in front of the library and civic centre is purely drop-off and a disabled
As
park.
angle, yeah.
Yes, and then on the Bering Square east side is the 45-degree angle parking.
Okay.
You said 90 degrees, but it's 45 degrees, to be clear.
I'm just reading the concept plan proposed to create a one-way traffic flow along Bering Square East with 90-degree angle parking in front of the library and the civic centre. So how many car parks will we have along there in total?
I'm seeing 45 degrees, not 90. 1.5.
I'm
recommendation
reading
has
issue 5
45.
BSE parking and roading, page 64. I'll go back to 58. Anyway, regardless of that, it doesn't really alter the tenet of my question. How many car parks will we have, please?
We'll have to go and count them, sorry. I don't have the number off the top of my head. We'll certainly maximise the car parking where we can.
Yeah. I think it was like, was it 16 per side, or have I made that up completely? Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it, Tony.
It is what'll fit in.
It's just I would have thought it would be in the report. That was all.
Hamish?
Just to clear up the issue of 90 and 45, the original plan proposed 90, and it's now being amended to 45 following consultation.
Yeah.
So the recommendation is 45-degree parking, not 90, but 90 was originally there. So that's where the slight confusion is.
Sure.
Councillor Cameron?
I'm off.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Page 66, at the bottom of page 66, can you just clarify the cost? Is there a zero missing from that cost?
Through the chair, yes, there is. There should be 112,000 for preliminary design.
Thank you.
Councillor Falloon?
Thank you. Just following on from the cost, have we had a budget for this, or am I correct in thinking that the figures that we've seen, that the budget for this was somewhere north of $2 million? So are the architects being given a cap to work within as part of this?
Hamish?
We'll be including budget in the long-term plan, and my recollection is that we'll be including a sum of 300,000 as opposed to several million. But I'm just looking at Jane, but that's my recollection.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have got the budget provision now. You approved it for the detailed design, yeah, and I think that was about 112,000 for this first stage. The money for the actual, the budget for the actual work, we're going to consult on that as part of the LTP was the plan, and the figure was about 2.2 million.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question, Hamish. I know this is the final part, and I'm quite happy with the recommendations we've got here, but is there an option that council can see the plan just before it is finished? So, just to make sure that all the things are in the right place. What we did with the Civic Centre and the library as well.
Well, yes, and but my point was more that if there are things that you doesn't feel were right in terms of this concept, now's the time to be talking about it. And it followed really that comment around having a more central place for the Christmas tree, and there's a clause in there that says put the power in the right place to use it, as intended. So there's that sort of detail still to be finalised. But if you look at the particular matters that we got feedback on, which was in relation to the likes of the colonnades, in relation to the sculptures and the things that the community had a view on, that you've then considered in making this decision that we're doing one thing or another, then those are the things that you wouldn't expect council to relitigate. The work is now proceeding to do the design on the basis of the concept that you consulted on and have now reached a decision on the fundamental parts to it. But we can certainly circulate the very final design with the various.
Councillor Mackay.
Mr Mayor, two questions. The first one is in number 2, that council officers undertake a condition assessment of the John Grigg statue and incorporate remedial work if required into future budgets. Is that the officers' budgets or is that council's budget? That's the first question.
There is only one budget for the council. Council sets it, officers then go and do what was asked to be done. There's only one budget. We don't have a separate budget to council.
Supplementary to that question, if I may, Mr Mayor. So, this matter of the John Grigg statue, if there's anything to be done, or what's to be done, will come back to council for approval, I presume. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It has to. It's the only way we get any budget.
Thank you. I'm just really going on what past remarks have been, Mr Mayor. The second question is that council brings forward the review of the mobile shops and hawkers bylaw to 2022, I presume. In the past, council has always approved that. I presume council will in the future. Is my presumption correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
We're bringing it forward, yes, because in the submissions it was talked about. I think the John Grigg statue has its own fund. Yeah. Which may or may not be enough. Councillor Brown.
If there's no more questions, I'm quite happy to move the motion, the recommendation.
Still got questions coming?
Okay.
I think.
Wait.
Oh, no, there's no more questions. Councillor Brown moves, Councillor Lovett seconded.
I'd like to second it, and I think the plan looks great. I'm quite happy with it.
Speak to the motion, Councillor Brown.
Yes, I can. I think it is quite nice to keep a lot of the old stuff, what I call old stuff, there, because you learn from the past if you go into the new world. So it's quite nice to see those statues staying there. I think it will be exciting because it will be part of the civic centre. It will be all one area. It will be a far better area to use for congregation from bigger groups of people around the middle of town. I think it's a great step forward to get us into the modern era.
Spoken and right reply at the same time, I think. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. Next item of business is the notification of proposed plan change 4. Thank you, Tony. And welcome, Ian. We've got your report in front of us, and we've got the other report, which was good reading for the CBD. Ian, could you just take us through the journey we've gone through first, and the journey the public's been on, or the CBD public's been on, to get to where we are today, to recap?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What a journey it's been. Just as a very brief summary, this plan change came about following an assessment of the town centre viability and also the district plan provisions. Provisions in the district plan generally are around about 10 years old now, some of them. Since they were adopted, we've had the earthquakes, we've had the earthquake strengthening regulations, legislation, we've had changes in consumer behaviour, and most recently COVID-19, which obviously has changed things quite significantly. Back in 2019, late 2019, we had a report commissioned by Property Economics to look at the state of the Ashburton business environment, primarily with the Ashburton CBD, but also more generally around the district and the way that the district plan works. The key recommendation of that report was that there was a need for the identification and prioritisation of a core retail area to re-establish CBDs as the CBD's position as the economic, social and community heart of the district. So subsequently we then engaged plans consultants to look at how to achieve this focus. This was settled on a focus plan change as opposed to leaving it to the wider district plan review in a number of years. As part of that, the consultants also reviewed relevant provisions from Christchurch City Council, Taupo and Queenstown, which are also second generation plans like ours. So councillors might remember that Matt Bonnis, the planner from Plans Consultants, ran a workshop with you on in August of this year. We then had a meeting on the 9th of September 2020 with town centre landowners in the central CBD. So that's basically where we're at now. Following that and following the what we call Schedule 1 consultation, which is consultation with the statutory parties, local Runanga, Ministry for the Environment, our neighbouring councils and others, we have now approached the position where we think we're ready for to put this plan change to you, to see whether you're prepared to endorse it for going out for public notification. So that's basically the summary.
Thanks, Ian. That's a very good overview of where we started and where we're at now. So, councillors, questions? Councillor Brown, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was certainly light reading. Something I found quite interesting on page 33 of the big version, and it states there refreshments at Ashburton Sale Yards are exempt from those limitations. Are the stockyards, or are they still called stockyards, or is it just commercial now in Tynwald?
What number on page 33?
It's basically on page 33, and it's 118 permitted retail activities in business D and E zoning.
You're on that one?
The big book, yep.
What page?
On 33 and point 118.
118. Permitted retail activities in the business D and E, is that?
Yes, and then the last line there talks about refreshments at Ashburton Sale Yard.
Just note for councillors, it's actually page 34 on Stella. So 33 in the document, but 34 on Stella if you're trying to go through it via your computer.
33,
Yeah, it's 33 on the document, but 34
sorry.
on Stella.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your point is we don't have a sale yards anymore?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, through the chair, I believe that's a legacy issue from when, up until quite recently, there was that kind of activity on the site and was an allowance for, I guess, on sale days, food and beverage to be sold.
But since it's been sold, that has been taken off straight away.
Yes.
Okay, that was the question.
Yes.
Well done, Lane. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is, how robust is this? We've continually seen people overthrow our district plan or circumvent our district plan through money and barristers. Is this going to stick things in, really this is what we mean? Or is it just another case of somebody will come along and with enough money and legal beagle will be able to overthrow it?
Ian?
Through the chair, I'll attempt to answer this, and I'm sure Jane will jump in if she thinks it needs clarification. Effectively, what this plan change is attempting to do is to address the issues that you're raising. That the way that the district plan talks about the business A zone at the moment is actually paradoxically that it almost encourages development outside of the business A zone. So the real intention, it is, I will admit, a complicated plan change to do that, and because we're trying to really refine the issues and kind of clarify where we're going. But the whole intention is to make it easier for appropriate retail to be in the town centre than to be anywhere else. There will still be, because we're not proposing any prohibited activity status applications, there will still be the opportunity for people to apply to seek things that are outside the rules and what we would not hope to see. However, it will make it a far higher hurdle for them to actually get that over the line, because they'll have to provide a lot more evidence and justification to show that it's appropriate, because we're adjusting the rules and the policies and objectives and the definitions as well to really focus in on the idea that the town centre is the primary spot for appropriate retail and those type of activities.
Councillor Rawlinson, go off the supplementary.
A supplementary, can we not have it a bit stricter so that it's not a prohibited, but what's the intermediate term, that it's a discretionary? Does that strengthen us stopping people doing things that we don't want to do?
Just for councillors' information, sorry, through the chair, the hierarchy goes permitted, controlled, which is where you have to approve it, but you can attach conditions, limited discretionary, which is when you can only focus on certain issues, fully discretionary, and then it's non-complying, which is the one where it's effectively, we don't think this is appropriate at all, but Fairly Burke's trying to justify it, and then prohibited. So non-complying is where a lot of these activities are, well, especially in the business D, E and F, the heavier industrial sites are now becoming non-complying activities, whereas before they were, they could have often been restricted, discretionary, and others. Yes, so we've got a table here that I think the councillors have seen at the previous workshop, which shows, or two tables actually, which shows what
73.
Yeah. So.
Okay, 35. Just thinking about that table, it says what the new plan would allow. Is there a table to show what the existing plan allows? Is it? I've seen it here, I don't think I have. So we can see the track changes?
We think through you, Mr Mayor, that both are in there, but we just need to check on that.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. My question just goes back to, I'm in the plans book on page 161 on Stella, which is, again, talks about the retail activity in E and F zone, and that piece about the sale yards. But first part of my question, so anything in dark print in these new terms is new, or is it just being highlighted to us?
Sorry, through the chair, could you just mention what, I'm not on Stella, so just the page of the report.
73, which...
So I've gone out of, I've gone off the council thing into that plans booklet that Neil's looking at.
Yeah, what page on that?
Page 160.
It's the current operative plan.
Yeah, my question was to clarify.
Oh.
Yeah.
5.8.2.
Through the chair, in this document, where, and the general style of doing amendments to district plan is if it's underlined and in bold, it's new, and if it's struck through, it's a deletion.
Thank you. That was what I assumed. So it's supplementary, if I may.
Yep.
So just the piece about the events, sales and things at the sale yards, and then it's left the Hines-Hekio district in there. So if somebody wanted to have an on-farm, say a stud cattle sale or a sheep sale in a big marquee, close to town, would that allow them to do that, to have their sale and their refreshments, or?
Through the chair, there are allowances in the district plan for temporary activities, for for those one-off events or, annual events and things like that. And there are other provisions, so the special licenses and things that they could go through and through the Building Act, which do allow those type of special things to occur.
Great, thank you. I learned a lot reading that book.
Councillor Cameron?
Just a quick question then. Why are they not prohibited options then in the plan? I'm sure just remind me of that, please.
You can impose, we can suggest prohibited activities, but the bar for a prohibited activity is incredibly high, because it effectively means that if you are a business owner, for example, and we seek to impose a prohibited activity status on your property or in your land or activity or whatever, it means that we are saying that under no circumstances is there ever a situation where you could do this. And so the bar for us being able to prove that is really, really high, or for anybody being able to prove it actually. In certain circumstances, yes, there is a requirement. For example, under a lot of our lakes, you're not allowed powered watercraft on them, except in very, very specific circumstances. But those are really, they're really, really high bars, and it just invites challenge.
Okay.
Unless you're very, very sure of the ground. Yeah.
Thank you.
And just slightly further to that, through you, Mr Mayor, you wouldn't be able to justify a prohibited activity to ensure the primacy of your CBD.
Okay.
Too high a bar.
Too high a bar, yeah. So it makes it easier basically because you've got to reach it.
Councillor Lovett? Councillor Lovett?
I was just going to ask, where people trading from home fit into this, because just on the street away from the CDB now, we're finding people trading, got shops at home. So where does all that sort of sit within this? Is it a permitted activity, or is it, where does it sit?
So through the chair, the district plan already has allowances for home occupations, which are limited in terms of their size and the type of activities you can occur, that can occur on the site, and that also has a prohibition on retailing. If you are retailing, then you need to get resource consent for it or apply for a resource consent. But there is certainly an allowance for certain types of activities at very, very small scale. Otherwise, and we're not going near that with this plan change. This is very much to do with the commercial zones. However, having said that, I think it's important to note that if you do have an activity that's, for example, starts off as a home occupation and gets to a certain point, then definitely our encouragement would be, hey, look, you're great, you're successful. Now's the time to start actually looking to move into a commercial area where you can start to really expand and grow your business.
No further questions. Looking for a mover. Councillor Rawlinson.
Yes, I'm happy to recommend. Do you want it read out or not? The recommendation is that the council notifies proposed plan change 4 to the Ashburton District Plan relating to amendments and alterations to the business and definition sections of the district plan, as proposed in the document accompanying this report, in accordance with the requirements of Schedule 1 of the Resource Management Act.
Second to Councillor Brown. Thank you. Open for debate. When's the hearing likely? Do you have any plan for that yet or not?
I think we worked it out that if we go ahead with the public notification now, we then, once that's finished, we run into Christmas. So the next step is that you publicly notify the submission, a summary of the submissions that you receive, and then there's an opportunity for further submissions. We wouldn't do that until late January, because although the Resource Management Act clock starts again in early January, it's best, we've found in the past, not to do that because people are still on holiday. So we would do that late January. So we would probably, the earliest we'd be looking at a hearing would be March.
I would say the
very earliest,
yeah.
March of next year.
Okay, thanks. Speakers for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour.
Yeah.
Councillor Brown.
Just a small thing. I think it's great to see. It's been a big job and it's a hard read. But for me, it gives clarity to the sounds, and I think it shows the people that we're doing the right thing, hopefully.
Yeah, I think you're right. We're doing the cosmetic work on the CBD, which is going to make it really smart. And here's something that may allow and entice people back. So it's a good step, I see. But we'll go out for consultation and see what comes in. See if people agree with it. I'm going to put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Hamish just wants to clarify the budget for Bering Square East. He's just got to have a think about it.
Yes, apologies for not having it at my fingertips. I just thought for the record we should confirm that the estimate was 2.7 million. And there was the suggestion that might become about 3. So I was conscious the media were reflecting Jane's comment and my earlier stumble. So I just thought it was a good opportunity to clarify that it will be closer to 3 than either of those earlier numbers. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, but it will run through the LTP process. Yep.
Indeed.
Thanks. Item number 13, Millybrook Place trees. This has been hanging around for a wee while. I think there's a good solution here, but any questions? Councillor Mackay, question time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In paragraph 5, while council approved these plans at the time, once the road reserve and associated trees were vested in council, it took over the responsibility. When the plans were being approved at the time, did any council officer suggest or ask that certain trees be planted?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think any of us could answer that now. There's nothing that was before our time. There's nothing on the file to indicate that. But to just expand a bit further on where that comment leads us is that we are in the background working on a code of practice for subdivisions. And it's unfortunate that we haven't got it finished yet, but it's a big piece of work and it's the kind of thing that people have to try and find time in their busy schedules to get on with it. And as a part of that, Bert Hoffman's, who I think is gone now, has he? Yeah, he's been working on things like a list of appropriate trees, and he's about 70 to 80% through that now. And that would spell out what trees are suitable where. And we wouldn't have things like oak trees that are going to drop acorns onto people's properties. The other thing that Open Spaces have asked us to look at is a tree and vegetation management policy, and I've just seen one this morning that another council did that's really comprehensive, and that sets out everything you could wish to know about trees and vegetation, what the process is for people, if they want street trees, if they don't want street trees, people wanting something done about heritage trees or assistance with pruning them, all of that kind of thing. So that would sit side by side the code of practice for subdivision once we get to where we need to be, and we would hope that we wouldn't have future occurrences of unsuitable trees being planted on the road reserve and later creating a nuisance for residents.
So you're going to bring us a report on what that plan would look like in
Well,
the near future?
in due course, but
In due
it's a
course.
fair way off. I think Neil
What's
McCann is
what's
going
a
to...
fair way off?
Well,
3 weeks?
it's just not... Oh, no, months and months, Neil.
You're helpful, aren't you?
I think Neil McCann's going to try and see if we can get some budget to perhaps even hire a consultant to help with it, because it's the sort of thing that's a big piece of work, and it's the same staff trying to work on the LTP and 30-year asset plans and all the rest that this keeps coming back to. So we need to look at how we're going to advance this and get it done.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for moving forward, so we don't get the problems we're getting with these trees. Wrong tree, wrong place. Yeah. Councillor Brown, question?
No.
Okay. Councillor Councillor Mackay, question? Lane, you go off. Lane, start again. Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, I didn't comment. I asked a question.
Yeah.
didn't quite get the answer I thought, but the answer I got was absolutely brilliant leading into the future, and gives me great heart that we're going to make good decisions in the future. Thank you to the officer.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Two things if I can. I'm quite happy to move the motion.
There's no more questions?
If there's no more questions. And the comment I've got is that certainly it's been done quite well for the last couple of, well, more than the last couple of years here in this district. Brook was done and developed by a garden centre, or people who grew trees here, militants, and they came up with the plan. I know about it because I was part of it, and I couldn't believe it what they did, but that was fine in those days, and now it's going to be changed, what is for the best. But certainly there is a plan already. Every subdivision what is getting checked off here in this district needs a landscape plan, and it certainly will be checked. I had different conversations with some of the staff regarding some of the plantings I wanted to put in, or they wanted to put in. So it certainly has been taken off. Yep, and it's great to see that.
Right, this recommendation is for the removal of 6 trees and replacement of the, with 10 flowering dogwoods. Councillor Cameron, you second. Councillor Floon, open for debate.
I certainly support the removal of the existing trees. Whoever put oaks in there needs their head read to me. But I note under risks, reputational risk, in making this decision, council may inadvertently cause a fracture within the Millbrook Place community. Is that fracture not already there?
I don't know, and probably don't really need to know. Correct. Yeah. No further questions. The right of reply, Councillor Brown, if needed.
Yeah, just if you want to see a nice entranceway to a subdivision, please have a look before the trees go down, because it looks quite great on the moment, but the wrong trees in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's certainly caused the adjoining landowners a lot of issues, and this will sort it out and make, I know 2 landowners very happy who live right next to these trees, and they don't stick to their boundaries, these trees. They shed and they go underground and do things that trees do. I'm going to put the motion on in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Item number 14, naming of road West Town Belt, Rakaya. Any questions of, it looks reasonably straightforward to me. And if no questions, I'm happy to move.
And I'll second that. Thank you.
Second, Catherine Miller. Any debate? Be a nice name, Eliza Way. I've never heard of that name.
My first girlfriend.
Councillor McMillan, there's no conflict, is there?
No.
Thank you. I'll put the motion on in favour. All in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you. Item number 15. Oh, 10 to 3, we're not there yet. Highlands Reserve Board leases and licences to occupy. Colin.
I'll wait till the questions are over.
Yeah, questions first, and Councillor Wilson has a question. Oh. And he signalled he will be moving at the appropriate time. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Through the chair, so I see we've got the Hinds Reserve Board, and then later on we've got the Rakai Reserve Board. Are these the only 2 reserve boards that need to have the leases granted, or is there any more sort of further down the track?
Through Mr. Chair, yeah, further down the track we will be having more and more of these as the reserve boards bring their leases that they have on their sites to our attention. So if they're more than 10 years, then there will be more coming. If they're less than 10 years, then the staff have delegated authority to be able to sign them off.
Just explain that, Colin. Less than 10 years delegated authority, more than 10 years not. What's the difference there? Just for explanation.
I think more than 10 years, the lessees will require some security because they will have invested quite a lot of capital in the buildings that they have on the site. So it's just a way of giving them a bit more security, and also then when they go to funders, they can say to the funders, we've got whatever it is, a 20 or 30 year lease. Therefore, if you're going to be spending X amount of dollars, it's not just going to be wasted, and then they're going to have to get off the property.
My question was more around the why the delegation for less than 10 and why comes to council for plus 10.
Oh, sorry, that's just seen as just 10 years is just, it could have been 8 years, it could have been 6 years or 5 years. That was just a term that was considered to be adequate for the lessees, to give them some security, but also to limit the amount of time that they would be on the sites for the reserve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The longer the term, the more permanent, kind of not permanent in the sense of it, but the more permanent nature of the lease, and those are the ones that they invest more money, and therefore it's more appropriate for council to be comfortable, if you like, that occupation exists for that length of time. Hence the split between delegation and not.
Councillor Brown, question?
Yes, I do. It was quite interesting to read through it. We've got Heinz and Rukaya, and both have a rugby club, and one pays $600 and the other one $3,500. I know that the reserve boards can set their own charges, but is there anything where we should be in? Because that's about 6 times as much for the same bit of land.
The reserve boards negotiate those, and there may be a reason why they're the separate amounts. One may be doing mowing for the reserve, or it could be doing other sorts of work. So you may not be comparing them together. You got to remember this is also just for the building as well, but there may be for the land as well. It depends really. So it's quite difficult to say, you're 2 rugby clubs, but they could be completely different. One could be mowing it, one could be doing a lot of other work, one may be sharing their facility, the grounds as well as the building.
Yeah, and knowing the Rukaya one, you're exactly right. There's varying things in there, and they set their own rates, and it's the domain boards, reserve boards set their rates. So it's good the way they do it. Councillor Falloon.
Thank you. Question on expiry of lease. I think we had a discussion at some stage on Glasgow leases and how some of the structures on these Glasgow leases are falling into disrepair, and if we take them back, we are going to get left with the cost of demolition and clearing the section. I just wonder, is it possible to have in the lease agreement a clause that if the lease expires, then it is up to the tenant to leave a clear section?
Colin, I suppose if you can find them. If they're financial. Yeah.
Through Mr. Chair. So what we have done now is that we do on the expiry, you'll see in clause F, and I don't know what page that would be on because mine says it's 98. At the expiry of the lease, it's quite clear what happens with the ownership of the building. And again, there needs to be a discussion because the building may be in such a suitable condition that it can remain on the building, and it'd be pointless to demolish it if it was going to be used by someone else. So that negotiation would happen then, and then from going forward now, we will be making sure that the buildings are kept up to a suitable standard. We have a lease schedule, and we also have an inspection schedule in there which gets triggered every so often when we want to do inspections of all our properties.
Councillor Falloon, supplementary question.
Supplementary. Basically, they own the structure and therefore it is in their interest to keep the repairs and maintenance on that structure going. But the question and really at the end of the lease, the obligation is really on the tenant to get rid of any structures that happen to be on that land.
If they have the financial means to do so. Colin, a comment on it?
Yes, well, you'll see in that, again in that clause, there's also a disputes section in the lease. So if there's a dispute at the end of the lease and you can't decide on it, you've got to follow that process.
Yep. I think finished question time. Someone like to move? Councillor Wilson's moved.
Just as an explanation.
Lynette, just go off.
Yeah.
You can second if you like.
An explanation, we were talking about the difference in lease. The Southern Rugby Club not only irrigate, mow, look after the whole of the Hinds Reserve. If you go past, it's usually absolutely immaculate. And 95% of that is done by the Southern Rugby Club. So that's how the Hinds Reserve structured its lease. That because it's a public reserve, anybody's allowed on it, but the Southern Rugby Club maintain it virtually 100% for us. I'll have much pleasure in recommending the recommendation. I don't think we need to read it all because it's all printed, so.
Yep. And they maintain it as does require to a high standard, as do the rest of the ones around the district.
Yes.
Councillor Lovett, you want to second?
I'll second it, thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 16, Rakaia Reserve Board. Similar lease, different location. Questions? Probably all answered the previous time. I'm happy to move.
I'll second.
Seconded, Councillor McMillan. Any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Mount Somers Hall, item number 17. Earthquake strengthening. Colin, if there's anything further to add to your report, it's all as is written. Questions, councillors? Yes. Stuart?
Thanks,
Councillor
Mr. Chairman. There's a request for 85,000. There's also somewhere 89,000, was it, from the Provincial Growth Fund. The two don't add up to 150,000, which is our business case was requested for the financial year. There's two or three different figures there.
Colin?
Why are we not using some of the Provincial Growth Fund to use the earthquake strengthening? We've sort of gone completely overboard. We're just about rebuilding the whole hall.
Mr. Chair, the Provisional Growth Fund application was for items other than the strengthening, so it was for some redecoration work as well. So yes, they won't add up to the 150,000. But what's happened now with the Provisional Growth Fund, we don't have to spend 150,000. Some of the work will be duplicated because we would have need to redecorate it after we'd done the strengthening. So we don't have to do that. So there's no double dipping in there. 85,000 is what we require for the strengthening. And if we do it at the same time, any of the remediation work can happen all at the same time. Otherwise, if the Provisional Growth Fund gets spent, it gets redecorated, we then go in next year and do some earthquake strengthening. We're going to be undoing what's already been done. So you're going to have to go and rip the walls out that have been put in place or painted, and that's going to cost us more money. So that if we don't do it this year, then it probably will cost 150,000.
So what you're saying is a coordinated approach which will save us money? Yeah. Councillor Rawlinson?
Sorry.
Thank you, and I was pleased to read that it is a coordinated approach. It just says that prices for the earthquake strengthening work have been obtained. So are you going out to the builders market, or are you using a local builder from up there, or what's the story?
We were using Joseph Builders to do this work. So normally when we have earthquake strengthening, we get the engineer to design it up. We then put it out and get it scoped up and then get it priced. then we'll take that and put it out to the open market.
Councillor Falloon.
Thank you. I fully support the idea of bringing the two projects together.
Question time. Question time.
Pardon? Sorry. Question. Where was it? Yeah, because of this PGF funding, is this likely to lead to requests from other hall committees who have received this funding to do other projects as well?
Hamish?
Oh, potentially, but they're free to do that anyway. So this is a specific example of coordinating the refurbishment of the hall, partly funded by PGF and partly funded through this request to council. Each of the other halls and reserve boards and community facilities are free to make their application to us as well.
Thank you. I've just got one question, Colin. It's loan funded. Which cost centre is the loan be charged to?
I'd get Mr. Brake to answer that.
Through Mr. Mayor, it'll be in the current year, it'll be charged to property, and then in the new year, it'll be charged as per the LTP revenue and financing policy, which suggests that it will go into the rural amenity rate for any cost.
Can you do that with that rate hasn't been set or that hasn't been changed yet?
It will be intended that the LTP will be prepared on the basis of your revenue and financing policy you've just updated, and that's how the costs will be costed at that stage.
So it's loan funded. We don't take loans against the rural amenity rate, do we?
The costs of repaying the loan and the interest will hit the rural amenity rate as per the new revenue and financing policy.
Councillor McMillan?
Am I able to move the
If
recommendation?
there's no more questions, yes.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation that council approves funding of 85,000, including GST, for earthquake strengthening and redecoration of the Mount Somers Memorial Hall in the 2021 financial year to enable Provincial Growth Fund repair and redecoration work to run concurrently, and that the funding of the repairs to be loan funded.
Seconder, Councillor Brown. Open for discussion. There be none, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 18, South Ruakāia Batch Owners Association Emergency Siren Funding. Claire, welcome. Questions, councillors? Councillor Falloon.
I'd just like to know a little bit more background on this, how this request has got to council and what sort of due diligence was done on this.
Claire.
Through the chair, so I received through the grants administration process an email from the South Ruakāia Batch Owners Association requesting this funding. They've had understanding that the rangatata huts have had a similar grant in the past, and I think this is why they've gone through this process now. They were not prepared for this cost. If they had known, from my understanding, they would have put it through the grants process.
Councillor Falloon.
Supplementary. As part of due diligence, do you actually look at the financial state of some of these people who ask for money? Do you ask for accounts and look at those? And I have another supplementary.
Through this process, through this process, no, we don't ask for that information.
Supplementary.
Well, I did some due diligence of my own this morning and consulted Professor Google and came up with some information that the South Ruakāia Batch Owners Association is sitting on funds of $386,000. Now, if they can't fund their own siren, I don't know who can. To be fair, those financial accounts were those filed to the year ended 31st of October 2018. Now, I don't know why the 2019 accounts have not been filed, but knowing how associations are loath to spend money, I suggest they could very well now have over $400,000, and to me, they have a cheek to be asking the council to fund a mere $5,000, which is less than half of the interest that they're getting on their investments.
Through the chair,
May not, yeah, for that response.
with our grant process and policies, this could likely happen for any group that applies for funding, that we would not know their financial.
Shall we, I think we're finished with questions. We're going to go into debate mode, I think. Councillor Wilson wants to debate.
No, but
You don't?
I haven't had a motion yet, so I
I
can't
know.
debate it.
Not yet, but I'm going to get a motion and then we can. Councillor Lovett?
Well, I'd like to move the motion that we support it. Can I talk now?
Yes,
or-
yeah, go for it.
Right. Okay. Well, Hecatory came to us for money, and we gave it to them. And it is for safety. The general public use these beaches, and if there's a fire or anything else, the general public is impacted as well. Or in Hecatory's case, there was a boat that was in trouble, and they'll use the siren to muscle everybody up. So it is a public safety issue, and I think we can't just pick and choose who we're giving money to. You give it to them all, and it's not that much money to keep people happy. So I support the motion.
Second up.
I'm happy to second, and the reason being is similar to Councillor Lovett, but also I think we've seen from the recent fires at Lake Ohau, they had an emergency response plan in place, and that's why no one lost their lives. And a lot of communities around our district have been talking about sirens, etc., and I think it's the least we can do.
Just a quick question, but would this also be used for a tsunami warning?
Yes, I believe so, but not predominantly. This has come through through the.
With respect, there's a different system, and so this isn't an official tsunami warning system.
Yeah.
This one's for fire, is it? Or
anything else? It's not a civil defence emergency system.
Right. So if a tsunami was to hit the coast, what would signal it require? What noise would happen down there?
The warning thing that comes through the phones and text alerts, but the direction from National Civil Defence is that if you have a tsunami siren, it's got to meet the standards, the New Zealand standards, and they're really hard out, expensive networked sirens. So this siren, if you approve it, would be for anything other than a tsunami, and if it was a tsunami, we would use our text alert system, and also national headquarters would pump out that
Only on text though, because there's no siren for tsunami down there. Yeah.
No.
But someone there could activate this. Could do. Yeah. Where do we get up to? We're going to move in a second. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm opposed. It amazes me, any application that I've been involved in to apply for funds from the council, you have to send in your balance sheet and your financial position and why you're applying and how you can't afford it any other way. I'm absolutely astounded that they're sitting on nearly 400 grand, and you do-gooders are going to say, just because Rangitata and Hecatory, they were obviously have got no financial background that they could afford to do that. To have an organisation with 400 grand, you're going to give them 5,000 of ratepayers' money with a bleating idea that it's used for a tsunami, and it's not used for a tsunami. It's just going to be a fun thing. I'm totally opposed.
Fun thing.
I'll assume the do-gooders was a compliment to the councillors.
I took it that way,
Carolyn
Mr Mayor.
Cameron. Councillor Cameron?
I took it that way indeed, thank you. I have a question, I know we're not in question, but can I ask a question? How is the alarm activated? Like, does someone push a button, or is it? Someone has to run to it and push a button?
Through the chair, I don't have that information on me, so I need to.
Because if someone has to run to it and push a button, then it's a bit of a silly thing.
I'm assuming they'll do it the same way they've used the old one that broke.
But how was that?
Push the button.
Yeah.
There's a button on the bottom of the pole. It might be in a wee glass thing.
Have they? Can I ask another supplementary question? Sorry.
Okay, then go for questions.
I can put it in a comment.
Make it a
Has the alarm siren been used before for fires where someone has run and pushed the button?
Not that I'm aware of, but I don't have that information to hand.
I'm sure it has, because there has been fires down in the huts where the fire brigade, Pendarvis, has headed there.
Pendarvis's fire brigade, that was my next. Yeah. And then presumably someone has to ring the Pendarvis fire brigade on the cell phone.
If the cell phone works. Councillor Falloon?
Yes, in my support of my speaking against it, just to correct Councillor Wilson, I don't think Rangataru has ever had money from the council for a siren. We can afford our own. Just coming back to the comments before about the general public, are the general public actually getting any benefit? A siren to me is for those who live in a place 24 hours a day, particularly in the hours of darkness where they need to be woken to a danger. Not during the day when anyone can see a smoke, and if the smoke goes up, everyone congregates, oh, who's having a fire type of thing. So for having benefit for the general public, to me, is quite minor compared. Most of the benefit goes to the residents, and therefore they should pay for it.
Speakers for or against? I see the siren as a necessity down there, so I'll be voting in favour of the motion. You never know when you're going to need it until you need it. So, Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, I agree. It is clearly there needs to be a siren if there's a fire in the middle of the night and someone sees it and runs and pushes the button, so everybody else can get out of bed and run away from the fire. What in the future, Claire? Can we have can people declare what's in their fund? Like, can we alter the grant request form?
We could look at changing the policy around.
Because that would seem to be quite relevant, I think. Yeah.
Maybe a question for Tony. When's this up for that discretionary fund policy, I suppose, up for review off the top of your head if it's...
Council just reviewed its community grants and funding policy, which sets out the high-level strategic direction. What could be amended is to create a form for the discretionary grant so that when a request like this comes in, then we go back to them and say, okay, we need you to complete these aspects of that, and then we can make sure that we're capturing the missing pieces of information.
Is
and
that at officer level, or does that council need to do that?
That's officer level. We can make that change.
So we've given you direction towards that? Yep, thanks. Councillor Wilson?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm not against the siren, it's just the principle. I mean, if they're sitting on 400,000, it's obvious if they want a siren, they can afford to buy it. Why are we using extra ratepayers' money? As Councillor Falloon said, it's half what the interest is they're collecting. They're going to continue to build up capital, and we're going to give them $5,000 of ratepayers' money that could be spent somewhere else in a much more worthy area where somebody can't afford to spend 5,000.
Well done there. Right, reply, Councillor Lovett?
No,
I'll put the motion. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
We'll have another show of hands and someone will count. All those in favour, raise your a hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Declare the motion passed. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Okay, we'll do it here. Right, thanks, Oliver. Oh, what have we got left? We've got Seth, we've got Christmas. Should we do the services over New Year? Hey? We'll go and we'll get underway. Order, councillors. We're just going to now have a guest to join us. Zoe Cluley, if I got it right. Welcome, Zoe. And you've got Caleb Curry with you, the Deputy Kids Councillor's Order. Deputy Principal of Mount Hutt College is joining her, and Caitlin Muckle, who is a friend and fellow student at Mount Hutt, and supporting Zoe. Now, Zoe's been was selected to go to Outward Bound on a scholarship funded by the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. And Zoe put in an application, and Councillor McMillan helped her with that, Deputy Mayor McMillan, and she has been to the Outward Bound, and she's going to just give us a little bit of how it went, what you learnt. So Zoe, if I could pass over to you. We're all friends here, just talk as you normally talk, don't be nervous.
Right.
And you could take us through your presentation. Thanks.
So, hi, I'm Zoe. Thanks for inviting me here today. I'm just going to run through my trip at Outward Bound. So, our first scheme was sailing, and this was for 4 days. We were out at sea. We had to work quick. We had to learn how to work quickly with one another since we'd just met, and working with 14 new people is definitely a bit of a challenge. The first few days we had a bit of assistance from the instructors, and then the last few days we were left to our own devices, so we had to sort of figure out how to run the sailboat and how to get it moving to where we wanted to go. So there was a lot of we all had assigned roles in the boat, and we had to pull our weight a lot of the time, so if one person wasn't quite doing what they're supposed to be doing, the whole sailboat could capsize, and we quite often got quite close to that. We learnt lots of new sailing lingo and slang, like tacking and jibbing, and then we'd afterwards talk about it and apply it to everyday life. So we did a tack, which was a way of turning the sailboat to get you to where you wanted to be if the wind was blowing you a different direction. And so how we'd apply this to everyday life would be, when you're heading down a wrong path or something, or you're facing a problem in life that you might not agree with, or just need to get out of, and so we'd tack to get out of it. One of our other schemes was the solo. I think there's quite a bit of talk about this one since you were left in the bush by yourself for a couple of days. It's pretty intimidating. But then once we actually did it, I think lots of people found it quite beneficial, since it was right in the middle of our trip. And I think when you've spent that much time with other people, 14 other people, it gets a bit much, and you need that wee break by yourself. So we were restricted to a small area. We were allowed to walk about 20 paces, I think it was, around our area, and we spent 2 nights and 2 days there. We weren't allowed watches, which was quite tricky to try and work out what time of day it was. And we had to spread out rations that we were given, so we had 2 apples and 2 carrots and 2 flapjacks. This gave us the time to reflect on what we learned at Outward Bound and what we wanted to accomplish by the end of our trip. So I set myself a goal that I wanted to successfully run my first half marathon in under 3 hours, which I ended up doing, so I was pretty chuffed with that. And I wanted to get better at setting goals for myself outside of Outward Bound and helping myself motivate myself to finally get things done, because I struggled with that. I had quite a few wickers annoying me in the night. I think that was probably the biggest challenge of the solo. They ended up stealing a couple of rations as well, so that was gutting. But yeah, I think the solo was not as scary as I imagined. I actually ended up enjoying it, and I think a lot of the other kids that were there enjoyed it too. So tramping was our last scheme. So this was 4 days, and we had to climb 4 peaks. A lot of the other groups we chatted to after they did it actually ended up not doing the whole thing because they all found it really challenging and backed out, but our group managed to climb the 4 peaks in 2.5 days. This is probably one of the hardest schemes we did, just because it was, mentally challenging as well as physically. Lots of people were sort of getting quite tired since it was the end of the 3 weeks and weren't sure whether or not they could keep going, but our group was really good at setting goals for each other and being like, oh, come on guys, if we get to this peak then we get to eat lunch. You're not allowed to eat until you get to it, so I think that helped us push through. At this point we were like really close, to the point where we started calling each other family, and I think, as you know, families argue quite a bit, so everyone was getting a bit touchy towards the end of it, but we had lots of support from each other to help us just settle down and get through it. But yeah, I think at the end of it was probably quite cool to look back at. We had some pretty bad weather as well, to the point where it was snowing and we were all in these tents freezing, and I had a mate that left his sleeping bag back at the watch house, so he was shivering all night, but I think afterward he learnt to laugh at it and, just shake it off. We call it type 2 fun, so it's when you find it fun after it happened, not during. So we met a bunch of crazy Kiwis from all over NZ, and I think now I'd say they're all some of my closest friends. We shared a lot with each other and got really personal and, made great bonds, and now we've already planned to meet off, in a couple of months and catch up in Christchurch and stuff, so it's pretty cool. Gives you like a good opportunity as well if you're ever up north and you're like, oh, I need a place to stay, and then you remember one of your mates from OB that lives up there, so that always comes in handy. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all the people that sponsored me to enable me to go on this trip. This is truly one of the best experiences I've ever had. I made long life friends and learnt new skills that will remain with me forever, and I'm very grateful that I had this opportunity and experience. And I think it would be very beneficial to anyone else that goes on it, so thank you guys.
Well, thank you for that overview, Zoe. That's really good. And I think there's another goal you passed today, and that's presenting this to council. It's not easy, and you've done very, very well.
Thank
and
you.
I think when you're out there, you've got to write a letter to home, don't you? When you're out on your own.
Yeah.
You've got 2 days to think about it.
Mm.
So it obviously got posted away and sent.
Yeah.
And you intercepted it before it got there.
Yeah.
That's really good. Councillors, any questions of Zoe? I think she's had a really good time there. Lane?
Yes, Zoe, you can teach me something. What are flapjacks?
Oh.
I would not have a clue.
I actually didn't know what they were either. They're I think they're in America. That's pretty common, and they're almost like a really dense biscuit, so they fill you up quite filling. Like people say that it's almost like a meal. So I think it's like an oaty biscuit. I'd describe it.
Councillor Flood?
Yeah, because you weren't allowed to use watches, were you a lot better at telling the time by looking at the sun and where it was in the sky when you got home?
Not really. I tried my hardest to work it out because I wanted to figure out how to spread out my rations throughout the day, but you'd sort of get to about midday and think it's the end, and then you just go on for hours and you're just, when do I get to go to bed? But no.
How did you get over the addiction to the cell phone?
I think I dropped that pretty quickly, actually. You forget about it pretty soon since you're all chatting and socialising. There's so many people to talk to that I think you just learn to forget about it.
And you weren't allowed it for 2 weeks?
3.
3
yeah.
weeks, yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Any further questions of Zoe? Doesn't look like you've done a good job of explaining how it went, Zoe, but so you've had a lot of fun by the sound of it. You've made a lot of new friends, which is really good, and I dare say you've looked internally into yourself as well and make yourself a better person, because I know people who have done it and they've come out the other side, and the same as what you're saying, it's a great experience, which also leads on to you could promote that to someone else, and if you think there's someone else at Mount Hutt or anyone really, get in touch with myself or Councillor Macmillan. So if you think they'd be worthy of doing this, because there's still some positions there to do it. So yeah, thanks very much for coming in. We're going to have a cup of tea at 3 o'clock. If you want to hang around, we could have a cup of tea together and have a quiet chat afterwards if you want to. Spend some time and see how we go here if you wish. But yep,
Yeah, right.
stay for a wee bit longer.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
And for the
That's
support
alright.
you also got. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah. My friend Meg did. Yeah.
We're going to go to Christmas.
Or it might be the new staff. Yeah.
New staff?
Yeah, new staff is a nice way to finish with.
Okay. We're going to welcome new and long-serving staff now. So Sarah, the floor is yours.
Through the chair, good afternoon to everyone. I've got a number of new staff who've just entered the back of the room. So when I call out your name, if you don't mind, please just standing up so that the councillors can meet you. And then at the end of this section, I'm sure they'll come up to you in afternoon tea room and have a quick chat as well. So we've got Loretta Arts, and she is our accountant who has recently started at council in the finance team. We've got Hannah Ashby Cochet, and she is our GIS officer in our information systems team. We've got Mo Dallin, and he is our projects and operations engineer in the operations team. And we have Dambar Yadav, and he is our utilities contracts engineer. And we also have Kate Fowler, who is our sports facility manager. So a broad selection of new staff, which is fantastic to have a number of positions filled over the last since the last council meeting. And we have one service recognition who was unable to attend today due to illness. So we'll just hold that over until next time.
Thank you for that, and welcome to all, and hope your time here is enjoyable and fruitful. And no doubt we'll see you at varying times when we, or if you present to council anyway, we'll see you. So that will be good. But we can see you very shortly when we break now for a cup of tea, and meet the councillors and have a chat. Cool. So everyone's invited next door for a chat and a cup of tea. Thanks. Welcome back, councillors, or everyone. It's an afternoon tea break, and we're now moving to item number 19, services provided over the Christmas New Year period. And we have on page 119, Sarah, take us to that.
Through the chair, this is a report that summarises our activities or rest periods, I guess is a nice way also over the Christmas New Year period for staff at council. As you can see, we've got a large number of facilities, and we're wanting to keep them open as much as possible, but also acknowledging that there are periods of low demand or lower demand, and also time for our own staff to have quality time with their families. So it's a balancing act to try and find what works best. We believe we have struck that, and we hope that council adopts this report so that we can continue as planned.
Questions, Angus, or straight to move?
No question.
Question? Yep. No, did you say no question?
Yep.
Anyone got question?
I just have one.
I'll go to Lynette for question.
I was just going to ask, is there going to be notices put on, like, looking sort of like the tin-walled pool and stuff, on the doors out there, so people know which days where it's going to be open and closed during the holidays, just to inform them that when they go there?
Through the chair, yes, we do communicate this through a number of means in terms of our formal communication methods, and whether or not they're on the doors, I suspect they will. I don't know if Tynwald has a door, it's got a gate, but I'm sure we can do something along those lines. The Tynwald pool itself, their traditional hours and traditional days, so there's been very little tweaking, if any, from previous years. They're kind of more set in sand or concrete than others.
No further questions, Angus?
I need some advice from you, Mr Mayor, before I move the recommendation there.
We'll try.
The advice is, the recommendation is council receives the report. Ms Mosley spoke about adopting the report. Which would she like?
I think we just receive it, will we, as the recommendation?
I'll move.
Councillor Mackay moved.
I'll second it.
Councillor Rawlinson seconded. Open for debate, if any. No, I'll put the motion on in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you, Sarah. It's got Christmas tidied up. Item number 20, Mayor's report. And the main item in there is Zone 5 and 6, and Councillors Macmillan, Cameron, Lovett, Rawlinson, Wilson, and to see Hamish Reck was at that meeting as well. And there's comments there that councillors have made, the observations of the meeting, which are reasonably accurate. Councillor Mackay.
Mr Mayor, question first, have the mayoral forum done away with the territorial authority, territorial authority reps on the committee?
Which committee?
Canterbury Water Management Strategy, Regional Committee.
They haven't discussed it yet.
Oh, well, I should have corrected the report when I saw it here. It says there that the discussions held on options, the panel would monitor progress. The size of the committee is reduced by removing the zone committee and territorial authority members. That has not happened. And in line with the discussion that we had beforehand, I did upset everyone at the regional committee because I actually strongly suggested that we do away with ourselves, and the money spent on the regional committee actually go into the zonal, spread across the zonal committees, so actually more environmental work could be done. And also I supported the suggestion that the zones meet at least 2 or 3 times a year together, so they could have interzonal contact, etc, etc, etc. So that's where I left it. I thought I'd written the report, but I did ask Philippa to correct the English, so that's been done. So it's up to the mayoral forum, and Councillor Mackay of the Ashburton District Council, Mr Mayor, would strongly recommend that you take the position of doing away with the regional committee when it comes to the mayoral forum. because I think there are more environmental jobs could be done around the region if that committee didn't meet and have a chat at an enormous expense for at least half a day every couple of months. There's a lot of resources tied up in it, and I think the resources could be better utilised doing other work for Canterbury.
So the intent of that regional committee is to advisory group. Is that what you're saying here?
That's the intent of the committee, and then the zonal reps, they all decided that they wanted to be on the committee as well. So
you were back to...
I said I upset everyone at the meeting by suggesting that we do away with ourselves. So maybe if you could follow through.
Yep.
Because I think for both councils, this territorial councils and the regional council actually have the final say through the mayoral forum. So I wish you all the best, and if there's anything I can do to help you, I'm here to help.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I fully endorse what Councillor Mackay said. I was a delegate on behalf of the Zone Committee at one stage, and when you get 20 delegates there with all sorts of opinions, from bizarre to the ridiculous, it just, that's why I felt I had better things to do with my time than go to that. I was most disappointed. I went there with great anticipation, but I found it didn't work. So I fully endorse what Councillor Mackay is saying.
Yep. Thank you. Item number 4, or item number 3 is the election results, and note there that I'll be building a close working relationship with our MP of the district. Item number 4, Community Honour Awards, and they are on tomorrow afternoon for the recipients to receive their awards, 2 o'clock at the event centre. You're all welcome. And and number 5, Outward Bound, we heard from Zoe. And item number 6 is the meetings that I've attended. It's only a month since our last council meeting. It's been reasonably full on. Councillor Wilson, you had a item of extraordinary business about the Zone Committee, which we'll take now.
Yes, I've been pointed out that as a council we passed that in the September meeting. So it's already been dealt with.
And that is the 3 items for focus for the Zone Committee.
I would just be interested to know where it actually came from. Was it, we passed the recommendation, but who in the staff must have recommended it?
It certainly went through the exec team. Where it originated, I'm not 100% sure, Councillor Wilson, but the exec team saw it and felt comfortable with it, and then it went through to council, and it was, as I understand it, adopted. So everyone kind of had a look at it and approved it, perhaps.
Supplementary. It's one of those situations, it's a lesson you should really study your agenda so that you understand exactly before you just sort of pass things as you get towards the end of the day. Sometimes things are passed without really understanding what you're doing.
The Zone Committee has asked for more clarification from Council on those 3 focus points as to what they actually mean. So the Zone Committee will get to thrash it out, so to speak, and some staff here going to flesh out what, in more detail, exactly what is required. So that's it. Moving on to, Hamish. Yep. Moving on to one I haven't got in there is the Chorus Communications, and you may have seen around town. There's some Chorus have these boxes around town, and they the mayor put out a plea yet of wanting people to come in and give a diagram of showing what arty things could go onto these boxes, and we had about 10 or a dozen come in, and the Chorus fund to be painted on these boxes to smarten them up a wee bit. It's been happening for a little while, but hasn't happened for a few years, so it's back on track, and we've had one painted already, which was in the paper. There's 5 altogether to be done of different designs, which are relate to the district. So you'll see them pop up over the next wee while. one's done, there's 4 left to do, and it's a partnership with Chorus. Chorus pay for it all. The only thing that council had to do was sort of coordinate, so no dollars involved, they pay, and they actually pay the artists to do it as well, which is good. So those 5 will be going up in the next wee while. I think they have till March to paint them. So that one I just pointed to was out of the North East Business Estate. I can't think which building it's outside, but it's on the left-hand side of the road. Drive down there and you'll find it. Opposite Waterforce, that's where it is, yeah. Yeah, so it looks very smart out there. And you'll see other ones pop up in town. I know there's one going to go down the Countdown Way and up here, they're sort of dotted around. As they get painted, we'll publicise them. So that's quite good. If there's nothing further for the questions on the Mayor's report, I'll move that we receive it.
I'll second.
Councillor Lovett.
I'll second it.
All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. That takes us to the end of the open part of the meeting. I think we've covered everything. I'll move that we move into committee.
Yeah,
Second,
second
Councillor
that.
Wilson. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried.